Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mick Bichamia, Senior Master, Director, Organizer, Owner at Los Angeles Chess Club, Janitor. So this is month of February 2017, and as I have been doing for the past 25 years or so, I talk about one specific topic in great depth, and the month of February is about openings. So today I will show a game that Richard Rapport beat Magnus Carlsen in January. Richard Rapport, among super GMs, and he is one of them, is famous as somebody who plays weird openings. If you see his openings, he has started openings with move c3 on the first move. He has played openings with g4. I mean, it's almost playable at the club, but not at that level. And he does something like this against Carlsen also. This is a game from Tata Steel tournament that he happened to beat Carlsen. But it's not because of his weird opening. In this game, he played very much like a normal person. So he improved his openings and he got his rewards, beating the world champion. He opened as knight f3 first move. He is white, Carlsen is black. This is Tata Steel tournament 2017. This move has been a favorite of every single world champion has played an opening at least with this move, maybe except Fischer. Because Fischer always played e4, except one time he played c4 in game 6 of the 1972 match, and that turned out to be his best game of the match. Carlsen played d5, that's a standard. White played b3. White usually plays g3, fianchettos this bishop first, and may or may not fianchetto the queen bishop, but in this game, so far, this opening is called Nimzowitsch-Larsen attack. But it transposes to another name that's called Reti opening later on with double fianchetto. So black played bishop f5. One of the best ways to play against knight f3 or Reti openings is for black to play what's called the London system, which involves bishop f5 followed by e6, and black creates a chain of pawns in light squares, and his light square bishop is outside the pawn chain, so that's a good bishop. And it gives the scope to the other bishop to maneuver. Perfectly good setup. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. This setup is so good that Emanuel Lasker, second world champion, he beat Richard Reti, who pioneered this system in a very famous game. So it has a very good reputation. So nothing wrong with Carlsen's setup so far. After bishop f5, white played bishop b2 and black played e6 per plan. White played d3. Since this bishop is enjoying good diagonal, white doesn't want to play d4 because this square is going to be weak for the rest of the game. The idea of d3, we still cannot name this opening objectively. If white plays knight bd2 followed by e4 at some point, that would be called King's Indian attack. If he plays knight bd2 c4, that would be called Reti system. So it's still too early to name it. Black played h6. This move at some point gets played, usually not at this early stage. Usually black plays a better developing move like knight f6, or even bishop e7, or even c5 or c6. So this is playable, but because it's a closed system, there's not much pawn interactions. Both sides pretty much mind their own business and just develop their pieces. So this is a positional setup. That means each side develops pieces the way they like. White played knight bd2, and black played knight f6. So far, so good. White plays c4. Only after this move we can give a name to this opening. This is called Reti opening. The feature of Reti is knight bd2, d3, and c4. And this pawn stays here on e2 for a long, long time. After c4, black plays c6. Black's plan was to create a chain of pawns on light squares. So he's done it. Now g3. So white is opting for double fianchetto setup. Double fianchetto setup is very positional. Basically, the game, there's a saying among grandmasters, when double fianchetto setup, the game finishes in the 7th hour. It's very close. By the time the game by the time game is trying to open up, it's a lot of moves, and it's really would be a long game. So black played bishop e7, white played bishop g2, black castled, and white castled. Okay, so we're getting close to the end of the opening phase. Black played knight bd7. With this pawn structure, it makes sense for this knight to go here. And white played a3. Take a look at white's setup. Double fianchetto, knight bd2, d3, c4. This is a pure ready opening. The way to play from this point on is for white's goal is to play a3 and b4 and expand on the queen side. The reason I especially paid attention to this game, because this is exactly what I play as white against my strongest opponents. I love ready opening. And from the first 100 informants, which are advanced chess books that GMs and IMs study, I've gone over every single ready opening. So I know this line really, really well. So white played a3. Of course, his goal is to play b4. And of course, black wants to prevent him. So black played a5, which is a common move in this opening. And in that famous game that Richard Reti played against Emanuel Lasker, he played the Reti system the old-fashioned way. And that was rook c1, followed by rook c2, followed by queen a1, followed by rook fc1. So there's a great deal of force in here that is about to expand. However, Emanuel Lasker had studied this system, and in a famous tournament game, he played Richard Reti, and he beat this system. Of course, the way Lasker played was bishop d6, queen e7, and eventually e5. But chess theoreticians, they realized that there is something wrong with this setup. So they improved on this setup. How did they improve? After a3, a5, they improved by playing queen c2, followed by bishop b3, bishop c3, followed by queen b2. You see, this battery, instead of being on b2 and c3 at the time of Reti, it was on a1 and b2. The advantage of this system is that white now can force b4, and black almost has no way of preventing this. This is how I play, and I love this setup. Very forceful. So in this position, white played queen b1. This is unusual move, even though it's playable. The main point of queen b1 is to have another eye on this square, so in case he wants to play e4 at some point, and also indirectly support b4. b4 immediately is playable. b4, pawn takes, and this bishop takes is a mistake because bishop takes knight, attacking the queen and exposing black bishop to his queen. So with queen b1, one of the ideas, like I said, is to possibly prepare e4. So black voluntarily moved the bishop all the way here, which if you study the ready opening in the opening books, this is one of the moves that black plays in this system. And black is very resilient with this system. It is very hard to crack this system because black is controlling the light squares with this bishop and also the dark squares with this bishop and knight. So how does white break through? It's not so easy. Black has a super solid system. This London system has a great reputation, and no wonder that Magnus Carlsen also plays this system. So it's white to play, and finally played that move, b4. This move is perfectly playable, and even though black has two attackers on it, and white has one defender, like I said, white has a second indirect defense on b4 pawn. So black cannot win a pawn. So black took, and white took. So far, so good. Now Carlsen played queen b6. Two ideas behind this move. One, to attack this pawn one more time. Second, in case white trades rooks, black can capture with the rook instead of queen. Okay, that's a reasonable move too. White played bishop c3. With this move, he also defended the pawn twice. So Carlsen here came up with an idea that is sort of backfired. I can see Carlsen not being familiar with this system. So he traded rooks, and after queen takes, now he captured this pawn with the bishop. Okay, looks like black just won a pawn. But all the people who play Reti's system, including myself, know that this pawn is, black cannot hold on to this pawn. One way to refute black's position is to play bishop takes bishop, and after queen takes, rook b1, and wherever the queen goes, rook takes pawn. And at the end, whose position would be more active? Clearly white, because his major pieces would be controlling the only open files in the game. You can compare the position of this rook that ends up on b7 next move with the black rook is still sitting over here. You can compare the position of the white queen with the black queen after it retreats to d6. White enjoys a good file, good diagonal, and all in all, white's position is just more active. From all factors of assessing a position, which are material, space, pawn formation, activity, king safety, everything is equal, except that when it comes to activity, white is a little bit more active. So sure enough, black retreated to d6 and white captured the pawn. And here's the position that slightly favors white. So here's a guy at the super GM level, Rapport, that is famous for playing weird openings, but in this game, he played one of the super solid openings. So whatever, the lesson is, whatever your style, you want to be a little bit more versatile. Study or practice on something that is opposite of your style. So Rapport usually plays weird openings. In this game, he played a super solid line, and it paid off very handsomely. Rook takes b7, and black to play. Black played e5. This is the position that Carlsen had in mind when he captured on b4, because all of this was pretty much forced. And he figured this is a very good position for black. And it looks that way too. So, but white, with a few powerful moves, he refuted this setup. I don't think Carlsen was expecting this move. He didn't think that he would do this. You see, black is threatening to go here and then play c5 to support this pawn, and then push for d4, e4, with all this force behind that pawn. This is the usual way that you break through in the center with pawns. But white did not give him a chance. In this position, white played d4 exclam. So if black wants to play e4, he can. Trouble is, this pawn is blockading his own bishop, and after this knight retreats, for example, to here, white at some point plays e3, and white has a much better pawn formation. This bishop has no scope at all along this diagonal. This position clearly favors white. So after white played d4, black captured. E takes d4. And of course, white captured with a knight. And if black captures here, that's not so good, because knight takes followed by this pawn that is loose. So it's black to play. He played c5. Okay, where should the knight go? White, I was expecting knight b5 in the game. And of course, if queen c6, rook here. But he played knight b3. I like this move too. That's also a good solid position for the knight. After knight 4 b3, black played d4. So it seems that black is okay. After all, d3 is coming next. well supported with the bishop here. But with a few moves, white proved that white's position is better. First, bishop h3. This move prevents black from playing bishop f5 and bringing the bishop to the game, and also preventing knight e4. Black's goal was to play knight e4, and if knight takes, bishop takes, and kick that rook from that good square. But this move prevents it. Knight e4 fails to rook takes that knight. Nice move. So black is trying to figure out what should he do. So he figured because of centralized pieces towards the center, he can open up the game. So he played d4. This move is kind of reasonable too. But white played e3, and that's another great move. So the best blockader of a pass pawn is a knight. So this knight is beautifully posted here. At some point in the future, white may consider sacrificing. Bishop takes, knight takes, rook takes, queen takes, knight takes. Get a knight and a pawn for a rook. But he can put more pressure on this pawn with, say, queen a5 next. So after e3, d3, black played knight e5 immediately. So what is black trying to do? Possibly knight here, hoping to create some accidents around here, since white's queen and rook are away from this kingside area. So knight e5, white brought the bishop back to g2. So this prevents knight e4 now, which was black was planning to do. And he's having an eye on the rook. Here, black played rook c8. This is black's weakest spot. This is the one that white was planning to attack with, say, queen a5 next. So Carlsen already defended it with rook c8. So as you can tell, white has an attacking position. Black has the defensive. Black is reacting to white's moves. So it's white to play. With a couple of strokes in the center, he proved that his position is clearly better. First, they played f4, and black played knight eg4. Then he played e4 with a deadly threat of a fork. So whose position do you like now? It's still white. His advantage improved. And how is black going to stop this next move? He can't. So black's position is becoming critical. And some accident is going to happen on this file. So black decided to move the rook back to the e file. And he figured on e5, he's going to sack a knight, get 2 pawns, and hoping with those 2 major pieces away, hoping to create some accidents around here. Sure enough, white went for it. That's a whole piece. e5, knight takes, pawn takes. And of course, because black doesn't want to trade queens, he captured with the rook. White would have been happily trading queens. So it's white to play, and white at this point made a move that I'm sure black completely overlooked. And this move made a big difference in the outcome. You see, black gets a chance. Next move, he's going to play rook here. Rook to the 7th is deadly, with another knight coming, with a queen possibly jumping in. But black's biggest weakness right now is his back rank, right? So white made a beautiful move that I was watching this game live, and everybody in the commentary room, the grandmasters, they missed white's next move. One of the major tactical themes in chess is called deflection. The nickname for deflection is go away. You harass a defender of a piece to go away to capture that piece. If you can remove it, you remove it. It's called removing the guard. But sometimes you can't remove it, but you want to harass it. You force it away. So this queen is defending the rook. White would love to check over here, but for now he can't. So white played rook b6. Beautiful move. If queen takes rook, queen takes this rook, and white would be clearly better. And this is what Carlsen should have gone for it, but it was a lost position. If queen takes, he's got a back rank weakness. This pawn is about to fall. Black has a lost position, and so he didn't go for it. Instead, he played queen e7. So with the queen going to e7, that means b8 square is available. And on this check, what is Black's only response? Reasonable response? 98. Blocking. It's white to play and win. Black has a deadly looking threat, rook check. And Carlsen probably overestimated this threat. He underestimated his opponent's threat. So white is not scared of this check here. He's going for the checkmate. So what should he do? One of the basic rules in chess says when a piece is pinned, especially absolute pin, keep attacking that piece with all your might. How can white attack that knight one more time?
Bishop c6.
Bishop c6, winning move. Now white can defend passively with, say, queen f8, but then white plays queen a4 3 times on the knight. Black can afford to move the knight. He can afford not to move the knight. Lose-lose situation for black. So that passive defense doesn't work. So instead, black came over here and gave a check. And of course, white was ready for this because he gave up the queen for the knight, for the rook. Takes knight, rook, queen check. After knight f1, now what can black do? If he moves the king here to defend the knight one more time, white would play rook takes, queen takes, bishop takes, king takes, and black is a piece down, a whole knight. That's a sure loss. Well, if he doesn't do that, what other options does he have? He doesn't have too many options. This rook check is deadly. There's not much white can do. So what made black lose in this game was that pawn that he captured here. Plus, he should have activated this bishop earlier. If this position only would have looked like this, now he could make a move like f6 and it would have been fine. Of course, white would have played a little bit differently too. But this bishop should have been activated. In the opening, he played correctly. Bishop does go to h7 best square. But later on, sometimes when games is slow, it's better off bringing the bishop here or bringing it even sometimes over here later on. So here's a game Richard Rappert that beat Magnus Carlsen, our current world champion, in a very famous tournament, in a fantastic game. Hope you enjoyed it. And next game is about another game that is famous in openings. That game happens to be same guy, Rappert. This time on the black side, in the European World Cup, European Club Championship, he beat Aronian, number 3 or 4 player in the world. Like I said, this guy's style is very unusual. All the top players are afraid of him. Why? Because they cannot prepare against him. They don't know what he's going to play in the openings. In the opening phase, he plays all kind of weird stuff. They just don't prepare against this guy. So here's a Richard Rappert on the black side. This is a 41 move game played against Aronian. He's another very strong super GM. And Rappert is on the black side. Aronian opened with d4. Black played d5, c4. So what's the name of this opening?
Queen's Gambit.
Queen's Gambit. What's the standard move here?
Knight C3, knight F3.
Black's move.
D takes C.
A C6 or E6.
D takes pawn. Queen's Gambit accepted is playable, and it even happened in a World Championship match one time that between Spassky and Kasparov, Spassky and Petrosian, and it doesn't have a good reputation. Queen's Gambit accepted. So here, Black either plays E6 or C6, which is a Slav, and a Slav is extremely popular these days. That's what people play at the super top level. However, Black played a Nimzowitsch defense, knight C6. Some people like to bring their knight out early, like Mitch, as white. So Mitch, this is a good line for you. Somebody plays D4. Dr. Valery plays this line also. It's a very tricky line. White has to be really careful. So white plays knight C3. Aronian is white. And Black plays knight F6. So far, so good. And white is trying to prove, you see, in queen pawn openings, it's a good idea to push your C pawn as a white and black. So that's why you don't see knight in front of the C pawn on the black side very often. The advantage of knight C6 is that in one go, Black can play E5, and he does in some lines. So Black has more positional pressure in the center. After knight F6, white can eliminate Black's center. One of the rules of the opening is always try to have a pawn in the center. So white just eliminated Black's pawn. So Black to play. Of course, it took with the knight. White could have played E4 now, and Black may take, and pawn takes, or knight B6. Chance of Black would have played knight B6. So white decided to strengthen center with knight F3 first, which is perfectly playable move. And now comes the move that really unbalances the position, E5. At first, it looks like a bad move. Black is just losing a pawn, sacrificing a pawn. Pawn takes pawn. And what does Black have? How is he going to get his pawn back? But as you can tell, both bishop diagonals for Black are open. So Black has a little bit of a lead in development, even though he started the game with half a move down. White still hasn't opened up this bishop diagonal. So sometimes when your opponent gambits a pawn and you're not sure what to do, accept it. But be willing to give it back at the right time. So white accepted it, correct decision. And now it's Black to play, and immediately puts pressure on the pinned piece. Now Black is on this twice. Threat is knight takes, and if pawn takes, bishop check or queen trade followed by take is also good for Black. So white played bishop d2, defending it twice, and Black took with the knight. If white captures with the bishop, Black will trade the bishop 2, and after pawn takes, white will have two isolated pawns on this side of the board. Doesn't look good. But white is trying to prove that Black is doing this all wrong. So he captured with a pawn. That means Black's bishop must move again. And of course, Black retreated this way. Make sure this bishop stays here for a while. So it's white to play. Now white wants to finish up his development. He played e3, and it's Black to play, castles. So Black even castled before white did. White to play, queen a4. The main idea behind this queen sortie is to defend this pawn one more time, because Black is about to play rook e8 and hit the pawn twice. And how is white going to defend the pawn one more time? The only way is with the queen. So sure enough, after queen a4, first Black played bishop b6, and after queen f4, guarding the pawn one more time. Black played queen e7. So with queen e7 and rook here next, black would be hitting this 3 times. And white is only defending it twice, and he cannot defend one more time. So what should he do? White tried to create some complications. He decided not to castle at all. He played h4 and tried to possibly knight g5, bishop d3, hitting this pawn. h4, and black played f6. I like this move a lot. You see, black could have won this pawn back with rook e8. But this guy plays very energetically. He doesn't mind sacrificing pawns for great position. So as you can tell, black's position is clearly better. So after pawn takes, rook takes. Okay. Just black's position, you can tell it looks better. It's more appealing. So white to play, he has to move the queen again. He played queen c4, this time with check. Black could have played bishop e6, and of course queen would have had to move again. But black played king h8. Best way to avoid a check is to get the king out of the way for good, and you don't have to worry about pinning or check later on. It's white to play. What should he do? He's behind in development, so played bishop d3. Makes sense. Black to play, he should play actively. His queen side is not fully developed yet. Bishop f5. This goes because this piece pretty much keeps white's position together. If he doesn't challenge this bishop or trade this bishop, white is going to play king f1, possibly. Castling is risky with this pawn here, or he may even castle, and knight d4. And that knight on d4, well supported with these pawns, pretty much hold white's position together. So black figured that he must weaken, trade these bishops. So sure enough, white took, and black took. White to play, what should he do? Like I said, castling would be very risky. Rapport is the kind of person that if white castles in this position, he would play rook takes, and after pawn takes, knight e5, and hitting this pawn. And white is weak on light squares. So white played knight g5. So what's the threat behind this move? Possibly he wants to play queen here and trade queens. Trading queens in this position relieves the pressure from black. Black is better developed. Black has more activity. So white is happy to trade. Black played knight e5. Okay. So if white had in mind to play queen here, in this case it doesn't work because of knight check. Wherever the king goes, possibly kept trading queens, and after knight takes, he could play knight takes this pawn and win a pawn. So after knight e5, white played queen e4. You see the 8 major tactics like pin. It's so happens so often that you got to use it every moment. These are like the tools of a chess player, all the 8 major tactics and 15 minor ones. Once you know these tactical themes, you know how to go about doing your business. It's black to play, and of course when you get pinned, you immediately should avoid the pin. So black played queen d7, unpinned himself, and guarded the rook, which was under attack. It's white to play, and he felt like with active pieces now he can castle. And it's black to play. What should he do? Sometime in the mid-game, which is what this is, if you're not sure what to do, think of some of the mid-game rules. One of the very important mid-game rules is called worst piece first. So which piece would you say is black's worst or least active? Rook a8. So where would you move it? Usually doubling rooks on a file is very powerful, and that's what you do. And that would have been a reasonable move here too. But in this game, Rapport played rook e8, and it just created a deadly threat. What's the threat? Knight check. And white will lose his queen, right? So what does that mean? That means, sorry, that means queen has to move again. Look how many times this queen has moved so far. He played queen c2 and guarded the bishop now. Black to play. Black's pieces are all poised in good squares. He just needs to find the right combination. But first things first, when a knight is on your half of the board, kick that knight. It's the trickiest piece on your side of the board. So h6 makes sense to kick the knight, and also creating a luft for the king, just in case later on. So white played knight f3. I'm sorry, he played knight e4. Knight f3 would be bad because rook takes, pawn takes, queen takes, knight check, and forking. White played knight e4. This makes sense. And knight is very well placed at e4 square. It's black to play. Another very important rule of the metagame is called piece optimization. Your pieces are developed, but you want to put them in very optimal and active squares. So rook h5 first, attacking this undefended pawn. So there are not too many good choices for white. g3 is possible, but it creates a big hole here. So white played knight g3 in hope of counterattack, sacrificing the h pawn. Sure enough, there's nothing wrong with winning this pawn, so black won it. You see, white is getting to the point of playing desperate chess. Sometimes your opponent sacrifices a pawn, and it's deliberate sacrifice. He's hoping for attack, like black did in the opening of this game. Sometimes your opponent sacrifices a pawn, and you can tell that's kind of desperate sacrifice. There's no big plan behind it. He's trying to bring this knight to an active square, and one of the costs of doing so was to lose the h pawn. So black took the pawn, white to play, and only now, on move 23, white moved his a rook. But you see the formation of these two pawns and this bishop? That is not good at all. Rook a d1, and black played rook f8. So this rook did its job. He created a threat, kicked the queen off the center. Now he's building on white's weakness, which is the king side. Black has a queen and a bishop towards the king side. He's got two rooks on the king side, and there's a knight that can jump into any of these squares at the right moment. These are all the hallmarks of a combination that is about to be made. Another point of rook f8, to prevent this move, and kick the rook and jump to this center, which is where it really belongs, over here, to blockade that bishop also. So rook f8 prevented that. It's white to play, and white played bishop c1. So there's a one move threat on the black queen, and of course black can easily deal with it. What's the most active square? You can go as close to the white king side as possible without being harassed. So played queen g4. Do you see an immediate combination here? There is no immediate combination yet, but black is still building, and white is pretty much paralyzed here. He's just at black's mercy.
Could have done knight to f3 check, and then queen to.
After pawn takes.
Yeah, and then queen to h3. Yeah.
Okay, that would have been a good move, but it wouldn't be mate though. He could move the rook to e1 and check king here, and he might escape, right?
Yeah.
But it's not so easy because he loses pieces. It's in this position, it is white to play. But if it were black to play, this knight check would have been deadly. Because after pawn takes, queen takes, after pawn takes, queen h3, he's threatening mate over here, right?
Oh, queen takes f3 is.
Queen takes f3, he's guarding this. This square is guarded with the knight.
Queen h3.
But now he's threatening mate here. And the only move for white
Rook e1.
is rook e1, and black still has a winning position. How does he continue? Check, king here, rook takes. What's the threat? Can anybody spot a threat? We know it's white's move, but if we were blacks,
Queen takes knight.
queen takes knight is one, and of course pawn cannot take. Rook takes knight is also playable. Pawn takes, loses the queen. So, but it's white's move. So it's good to know these kind of combinations that are coming. It helps you in with your tactics. So in this position, white played rook d5. Forcing black to make a decision with that knight. Black did not play knight f3, which would have been a forced line, which means that black did not have a winning combination. That's why he did not play knight f3. Instead, black defended the knight and he created a new threat. What's the new threat? You see, every move you want to create a threat.
Knight to f3.
Knight f3 check, and there's a discovery on the rook. In other words, this good-looking move actually doesn't work.
Because of the check.
Not to mention, right, because of the check, not to mention that this knight is also hanging. So, what did white do? White played queen e2. Okay, now knight f3 doesn't work, because on knight f3, queen takes exclam, even though there's a rook here, because if rook takes queen, and black loses the piece. So it's black to play. What should black do? Black made a move that I'm pretty sure Aronian missed, overlooked. Sometimes you can tell during a game, there are certain moves that one guy just did not expect. And that move was c6. He's forcing the white rook to leave off the fifth row. And once the rook goes, then knight combination could work. So it's white to play, and he figured black pieces are extremely active. I'm actually better off giving up an exchange, rook for a bishop, if black is willing to take. And of course, if he takes, after bishop takes, pawn takes, expose the black queen to his bishop, and this knight is also hanging, black loses a piece. So black should not take. Nice move. But black came up with a beautiful combination here. Can anybody guess what the winning combination is? Black to play, and came up with a nice combination. It took white many moves not to get mated, but eventually got into a lost position anyway. Black to play and win.
Knight g4.
Knight g4.
Threatening rook h1. And then check with the queen and mate at h2.
Right.
Knight to
White.
f3.
Knight f3 now doesn't work because pawn takes. Black gave up a whole rook. Wow, white can take it two different ways and they're both losing. First of all, what's wrong with knight takes?
Knight to f3.
Knight f3, pawn cannot take it. That means what is white's only move? After knight takes, knight check, he can sack the queen,
Right.
but rook takes, but he cannot even take the rook. And it's mate, right? In other words, white must give up the queen. This is mate, right?
Yeah.
So knight takes is no good. So what is white's only other option?
King
To take with the king. Can you visualize the combination after king takes, which is forced for
Queen
white?
I was thinking it was a queen check.
It doesn't have queen h4.
No.
There's a rook there. It's a very nice combination. I'm sure Aronian considered this move, but he felt like it's no good. That's why he let it happen. Well, let's make it a little bit easier. King takes. Now what do you think black should do? Makes it easier for visualization. Black to play. What's the winning combination? Black is hoping to have the queen here and a knight here, and that looks very deadly. So in order to do that, he must get rid of the rook first. So now bishop takes is good, because after pawn takes, exposing the queen, he can always check here next. That was the point of sacrificing rook here, because the king goes on h1 now, on the h file. So after bishop takes, white realized that pawn takes fails to queen check, king g1, knight here, and pretty much is going to be a forced mate. So he figured he cannot take that bishop. He gets mated. So instead he played f3. So this knight is hanging, but
then you can take it.
right. So it's black to play. Black now moved the rook back. I'm sorry, the bishop back. So there's a saying among masters, in the middle of attack, you don't count pawns. But for sake of material, let's see what's material balance now in this position. White has queen, rook, 2 minors, 5 pawns. Exactly what black has too. Material is completely even, despite all these sacrifices. So, but who has the more attacking position? I still like black's position. His pieces are much more actively placed. All the white pieces in these 3 rows. So black is dominating, no doubt. The question is, can Aronian, as white, defend this position? Because he's clearly defending. It's white to play. This knight is hanging, so he saved the knight with a threat. Knight e4. Black played queen h5 check, gaining an important tempo, and forcing the king to the dangerous diagonal. You can compare the position of the dark square bishops, and it's clear whose bishops is better. Had white somehow could bring this bishop here, he would have a slightly better position. But it's hemmed in with these 2 dark square pawns, and it's terribly defensive, purely defensive role, as opposed to that has a purely offensive role. So all in all, black's position is better. But how does he finish him off? That still takes a lot of work. Here black played bishop c7. So what area of the board is black is hoping to checkmate white?
H2.
H2. Sometimes when your king is about to come under attack, you run from the crime scene. You just run to the other side of the board. And even at World Champions, I've done this quite often. So white played king f2. He's about to run. Black doesn't want to let him escape, so he played queen h2.
Is there any good for the knight at g4 check? There's the pawns pinned.
Oh, he just walks away.
So, yeah.
Then the knight has to move again, so it's not a good check. So queen h2, and white figured it's safe. King e1. right? But black doesn't want to let this king to escape. So first he cut off black's escape. He doesn't care. He's playing number 3 play in the world. He's going for the throat.
So bishop to d2.
Right. White was figuring that, okay, I just need to find a cover for myself and then walk to the queen side. And this is where black said, check. So white king has only one choice, to move to the queen side of the board, right? And with the queen moving to this side, it's time for black to bring his queen to the queen side. So queen e5, 1, 2, 3, it's over. So it's white to play. You see, white's position is completely paralyzed. It just does not have a good move. What move you think white should play in this position?
Boy, you gotta move the bishop.
King c2 and then bring the rook over.
King c2 could fail to queen here, attacking the pawn, the a pawn, and not king here because of check followed by mate.
What about rook a1?
Rook a1. On rook a1 is playable, but then the problem with rook a1 is, what does he do on this check? Only one option, right?
b1.
The only move. And now comes queen b5 check, deadly. King c2, queen check, king d1, queen takes. So rook a1 doesn't work. Black played queen e5 and is about to shift the queen to the queen side. Like I said, white is very paralyzed in this position. So he played g4. This move is hard to understand. What could possibly be the point of this move? It shows how paralyzed he is.
g5 and open up the h file for a check.
He's hoping to, right, open a new attack, but his king is very much vulnerable. He's planning to play the queen on this side, probably here, and move the king to e2, which is relatively safer than being on that file. So after g4, it's just a matter of few powerful strokes. Queen b5 with a little threat here, check, bishop here, queen mate. So he played queen g2 with, on the check, he escapes to this square. So five powerful moves by black, and white resigned. So here you are. You got a winning position. You just need to execute it correctly. There are a lot of tempting moves and checks, but you got to find, first you got to make sure the king cannot escape to this square.
So the knight's got to move.
Exactly.
So knight b2 check.
Knight b2 check. So first of all, what's the problem with king over here?
I think maybe, let's see. Rook takes bishop.
No, queen takes.
Oh, knight check.
He has the knight check, but he's going for mate. I like queen a4 with a little thing called checkmate. So,
Made some more mismoves.
not to mention attacking this pawn too. So that's why on this check, white decided to move the king to c2. And it looks like it's safe. After all, he's threatening move like rook b1 and winning the knight next. So knight has to move because rook b1 is serious. So black played knight c4, threatening check over here, followed by hopefully mate. So white moved the bishop to c1 and guarded the weak square. So how can black finish him off in this position? 3 more moves and white resigns.
Let's see. The knight forks. Oh, maybe knight the bishop's deflected away to e3, taking the knight. The queen can come down to b2.
Well, if the knight is gone, queen cannot come to b2. This is a typical calculation among some chess players. This knight is here, so he's having an eye on b2. So you're thinking, I'll play knight takes, he takes with the bishop, then queen b2.
Yeah, because
But you don't have queen b2 because the knight is gone.
gotta get rid of that bishop. Maybe you should trade that bishop.
Well, you can always win a pawn by playing queen check, and after bishop takes, check and take. But he's not trying to win a pawn. White's king is extremely vulnerable. Next to two files controls with black majors. It's just a matter of finding the winning combination. It's there.
How about knight a3 check and bishop takes queen check at d3?
Black is thinking of queen check over here. And what is White's only move?
King to b1.
King b1. And he can check again, but the king goes back, or he may even go to a1. So after this check, king b1, he wants to give another check. What would be?
Yeah, knight a3 is the only way to do it.
Well, for now it is. But after his next move, he would like to check over here with the rook.
So rook d5.
There you go. See, once you see the ideas, easy to find moves. Black is in no rush. He slowly is building. And White has such a bad position that he cannot permanently improve this position. And how does White stop this onslaught that is coming? So he's desperate. He's hoping to create some desperate attack. He played g5.
Queen check.
Black to play. So Black can check over here after king b1, rook check, king here, and looks like he's safe. Right? How does Black continue? It's a little bit tricky.
Bishop e5.
What is the winning combination?
Oh yeah. Bishop e5. Because if the king goes to a1, that bishop takes c3 is going to be like mate.
There's a knight here. It's difficult to find a winning combination in this position. But Black found it.
How about starting to push an a pawn? Just start pushing the
Too slow. Black is going to create some. See, after pawn takes pawn, Black is threatening mate. And Black cannot take because of mate on either one of these squares. I'm sorry, with the rook behind it. That looks very dangerous. So Black found a combination. Knight a5. What is he trying to do?
knight a5 after the check.
You see this square is extremely weak. Threat is queen check, king b2, the only move, rook check, king a1, rook or queen mate. Right? So what should White do? White cannot defend d3 square with this move. Why not? Because there's a deadly check here, skewering and attacking the rook, and White will lose the rook. So that doesn't work. So White played bishop d2. On this check, he can come back to c1 or even d1. And I'm guessing that that White was in time pressure. Usually on move after time control, so many times it's been the losing move, and that was the losing move. This is move 41. It was 40-90, so that means 40 moves in 90 minutes. This is move 41. It was in such a rush to make the moves, but you got to make one more move, which you make sure you made the time control, and that move is often a blunder. It happens a lot among masters. So Black to play and win. What's the winning combination? Pretty straightforward.
Check at b3 with the queen.
That was the winning move. White resigned. What are White's options?
D1 or C1?
If king c1, now rook b5, and there's no defense against this
Okay.
rook here, mate, right?
So D1.
And if king d1, it's still rook b5.
Okay, then there's king to B2 then.
In this position,
Right.
if king to b2, black is still, this check is still deadly,
Yeah.
no matter where he goes.
And if he goes to A1,
If he goes to a1, how does black win?
Queen on a rook.
Let's see. Knight check. One takes.
I like this quiet move. Very quiet and deadly. How does he defend queen b2 mate?
Bishop c1.
Thanks to this
no,
pin.
you can't. Yeah.
That's why this queen here move is a
No, he
It's
goes
called
to
creepy
B1,
move.
He doesn't even
moves
take the
like
queen.
this in chess are famous
Yeah.
as creepy move. It's very quiet but deadly. No defense. So of course Aronian saw this in this position after queen d3. He resigned because it's obvious now, very obvious. Hope you guys enjoyed these two games by Richard Rappert, wild and crazy Hungarian player, and watch his games. I recommend go to chessgames.com and look at his games, his wins especially, and you see he's pretty much slaughtered all the great players of our time. He is one of those guys. I don't think he ever is going to make a world champion, but he's like some of the great attacking players in history that never, because of their unbalanced style of chess, they never make it to become a world champion. But they beat all the world champions of their contemporaries, and he is, in our time, he is the man. Hope you guys enjoyed it.
Yeah.